Amazing transformation. Widow deep in $50,000 debt. Farmer's incredible act revealed. Sarah stood behind the counter at the Willow Creek Diner, one hand juggling a coffee pot, the other balancing a plate of freshly baked pies as a steady stream of regulars filled the space. The warmth of the kitchen wrapped around her like a comforting blanket, yet beneath it all, anxiety clawed at her. The taste of burnt coffee lingered in her throat, reminding her of the mess in her life, $50,000 deep in debt and 2 children depending on her fragile shoulders. Some days, it felt as though she were lifting a mountain. "More coffee, Sarah?" Tom, the elderly farmer, asked with a twinkle in his eye, his weathered hands resting on the counter. He was the only regular who recognized the smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. "Sure thing, Tom," she replied, forcing a grin as she battled the panic roaring in her chest. Each shattering moment of grief surged through, reminding her that Lucy and Max were growing up without their father, and their future felt more unstable with each bill that rolled in. Could she stave off the impending collapse of her world long enough to find solid ground? She couldn't simply sell their family homestead, a place filled with memories of laughter, love, and the life she fought for. Yet the crushing weight of those bills made her second-guess everything. Just as Sarah forced herself to compile a shopping list for the groceries she could barely afford, her phone vibrated against the counter. A new notification. An offer from the corporation ready to swallow her heritage whole, eager to raise the land her husband had cherished. Sell to them, and the debt would vanish, but at what cost? A lump formed in her throat, the anguish threatening to spill over. Could she bear to sit back and watch everything her husband stood for vanish in favor of financial security? No, don't think about that now, Sarah chastised herself silently, pouring coffee for another diner patron. But the pit in her stomach tightened as she wrestled with competing instincts, the desire to protect her children and the yearning to honor her husband's legacy. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the diner windows as nature sang outside, completely unaware of the storm brewing within Sarah. Tom leaned in closer, sensing her turmoil, and quietly whispered, "You do know how to grow things, don't you? Your husband showed me that with those sunflowers of yours." His words ignited a flicker of resolve buried beneath the debris of helplessness. But was growing flowers enough? The idea of turning her family's struggles into something more wasn't lost on her. Yet could it be a true path? Torn between her security and her heart's roots, uncertainty enveloped her like the ever-looming shadows of late afternoon. Just when hope seemed to sprout, the weight of choice bore down like an anchor. Tom's wisdom could nurture a vision she never knew she possessed, yet could she really emerge from debt and heartbreak just by cultivating the land? Ravaged by indecision, Sarah's world spun, and the walls of the diner felt like they were closing in. In that moment, she noticed Tom's bright smile fade slightly as he locked eyes with her, as if sensing her internal battle. A murmur of connection flashed between them, yet its meaning hung heavily in the air, taunting her with what felt like an impossible journey ahead. She could either take a risk that might bloom into a new life or surrender the very essence of her family for short-term survival. The choice rang louder than the clatter of plates around her, threatening to drown out her every thought. She could almost taste the fear on her tongue, the promise of what could be slipping just out of reach. In a fragile silence, where every heartbeat echoed her doubts, Sarah resolved that tomorrow would bring decisions to forge either her family's present or its future. The ache inside her amplified, whispering of love and loss, and she couldn't help but wonder, what legacy would she choose to honor, and what toll would it take to see it through? The dawn broke sharply the next morning, its light illuminating not just the Willow Creek Diner, but also the shadows lining Sarah's heart. She had barely slept, tossing between despair and determination, her thoughts spiraling into a cacophony of what-ifs and should-haves. The kitchen hummed with the sound of griddles sizzling and coffee percolating, but Sarah's focus was elsewhere, on the plot of land that seemed to breathe with her husband's essence, As she wiped down the countertop, Tom's words replayed in her mind, each echo urging her to nurture her latent skills. Did they really connect with her? Could tending to seeds and soil offer salvation? She inhaled deeply, letting the aroma of fresh coffee sharpen her resolve. I need to make a decision, she muttered to herself, fingering the worn-out edges of her apron. She was aware that remaining stagnant was not an option, yet the fear of failing loomed menacingly over her, like thunderclouds on a summer's day. With her children's future at stake, the stakes felt impossibly high. The diner bustled with customers, but Sarah felt isolated in her thoughts. As she served pancakes dripping with syrup, her eyes fell on the door, where a farmer's only sign hung loosely. It mirrored her internal state. Was she indeed a farmer at her core? What had once felt like an obligation now seemed like a lifeline. During her break, she snuck outside for fresh air, letting the cool breeze calm her racing heart. The sense of hay and earth filled her lungs, and for the first time since her husband's death, she felt a flicker of hope. What if she, a widow in debt, could turn this burden into something more? A community garden? A nectar sold at the local market? The ideas danced around her mind, each one more exhilarating than the last. Back inside the diner, she watched Tom scribbling notes on a napkin, the light capturing the determination in his aged features. Inspiration surged within her. She approached him, gathering her courage like ripening fruit. "Tom, can we talk? About farming?" she stammered, thrusting her insecurities to the side. Tom looked surprised, his kind eyes widening with an array of emotions: joy, concern, hope. "Of course, Sarah, it's about time you tapped into that talent of yours," he said, motioning for her to sit. As they talked, he shared techniques about crops and dirt, his enthusiasm infectious. Sarah listened, mentally compiling information like a master gardener. Each tidbit fueled a burgeoning sense of purpose, slicing through the fog of indecision that had encased her. The conversation flowed, with Tom urging her to visit the old fields behind their homestead. "You have the land, the skills. You'll find a way." Each encouraging word from Tom chipped away at her doubt, until she finally found herself mapping out a plan. She felt lighter, the oppressive weight of her debt slowly lifting as the future unfurled before her. By the time her shift ended, Sarah's heart raced not with fear, but with a glimmering resolve. She would start small, perhaps a few rows of vegetables for local markets. Each seed she planted would symbolize her refusal to let go of what mattered most: her husband's legacy, her children's future. Yet, as she turned the key in the lock of the diner for the last time that evening, a brewing storm in the distance mirrored her internal tempest. The corporation's looming offer lingered, like a serpent coiled and watching. The decision she had made could create ripples. Would it be enough to protect what she loved? The course of her journey, it seemed, hinged not just on what she could grow, but on the battles she would face. How much was she willing to fight for? The shadows flickered around her as lightning streaked across the sky. She was about to step onto a path fraught with obstacles, where each day might demand more than she had to give. As the first raindrops began to fall, Sarah wondered, could her ambition weather the storm that was surely coming? The rain fell harder as Sarah drove home, each droplet a reminder of her precarious position. Slipping behind the worn steering wheel of her old van, she wrestled with the anticipation of committing herself to farming. Her heart quickened at the thought of transforming their land, but it was accompanied by an ache of doubt. Was she truly ready to wade into this unfamiliar territory? Arriving home, she was greeted by the familiar silence of the household, punctuated only by the whisper of the wind through the trees. She glanced at the empty swing set in the yard, a bittersweet reminder of the carefree days before grief had shrouded their lives. The children were spending the night with friends, an unexpected bit of solitude that felt both freeing and confining. She could finally think, yet the weight of the decisions ahead pressed down on her. As darkness swallowed the yard, she lit a single candle on the kitchen table. It flickered with life, casting shadows that danced along the walls, mirroring her conflicted emotions. In that moment of solitude, she allowed herself to contemplate the mornings ahead, waking early to the sounds of nature, tending to crops, pouring her energy into something that could sustain her family and perhaps, in time, heal her heart. But with dreams came realities. She grabbed a notebook and a pen, scribbling down every thought that flickered across her mind as if trying to catch fireflies. What crops could she grow? How would she finance the seeds and tools? The debts were not just numbers, they were looming threats, an electric current of anxiety coursing through her thoughts. She calculated the risks, each prospect entangled with fear and exhilaration. As the candle burned lower, illuminating her pages filled with sketches of vegetables and farmland, a knock on the door shattered her concentration. Startled, she rose to answer, a nervous flutter in her stomach. Standing on her porch was a kind-faced neighbor, Jane, holding a basket full of fresh produce. "Thought you could use these," she said, an easy smile on her lips. "I know you've got a lot on your plate." The warmth emanating from the basket was comforting, yet it was the goodwill behind it that struck Sarah deeply. She invited Jane in, her gratitude spilling over, and as they chatted, she found herself sharing her nascent plans for farming. Jane listened intently, nodding encouragingly. "You have a talent for this, Sarah," she said earnestly. "You just need to take that leap of faith. The community is more supportive than you think. You may find help where you least expect it." Each word was a pebble dropped into still water, rings of encouragement spreading outward, until Sarah felt buoyed by the prospect of connection. As Jane left, Sarah felt different, inspired, but the cloud of doubt still loomed, gnawing at her resolve. Would it be enough? In the back of her mind, the corporate offer twisted like a serpent, a reminder that her dreams could be snatched away if she faltered. The choice was clear. Stepping into farming meant venturing into uncharted territory where both success and failure could have unimaginable consequences. With the candle burning low, Sarah made a decision. She would reach out for help, gather knowledge, and begin to harness her skills. Then perhaps she could fight back against the relentless tide of uncertainty. But with each step, would she be stepping closer to salvation or deeper into chaos? Her phone buzzed, an alert from the corporate office flashing across the screen. The email contained details about her last attempt to negotiate. A battle was on the horizon, and as relentless rain continued to drum against the roof, Sarah braced herself, knowing that she could not afford to lose. Tomorrow would demand her all, perhaps more than she was ready to give. But the flicker in her heart told her that it was time to face whatever came next. Would this be the beginning of a newfound life? Or would the weight of her choices pull her under? Morning light breached the horizon, filtering through the raindrops still clinging to the window pane. Sarah stretched, her muscles vaguely protesting the physical challenge she was about to undertake. Today wasn't just another day, it was the beginning of something that had the potential to reshape her life. Determined to reclaim her purpose, she punched the air. Today was not for half measures. After a quick breakfast, she methodically crafted a plan. It was simple, yet ambitious. Today, she would take her first steps toward the land, the soil, and ultimately, her future. Each decision needed to echo with clarity, shedding the fog of doubt that had recently shrouded her spirit. She wasn't merely stepping into farming, she was cultivating the strength to rise above her circumstances. As she drove toward the property, she felt the pulse of the earth beneath her, a stark contrast to the sterile corporate world she was trying to escape. The fields, often taken for granted, whispered promises of growth and sustainability. What had once been a distant dream now felt tangible, waiting for her to claim it. With each turn of the tires, decisions crystallized in her mind. She would need to prioritize her resources. Arriving at the farm, she surveyed the land. Empty and underutilized, it appeared to mirror her own life, stripped of vibrancy. Her fingers grazed the soil, feeling its coolness, and in that connection, something awakened inside her. But potential without knowledge was a landscape unfit for planting. The hours melted away as Sarah pored over online resources, stacking pages of information about crop selection, soil health, and pest management. Each revelation ignited a spark, their cumulative energy electrifying her previously stagnant resolve. When she landed on a local agricultural forum, a sense of connection sparked again, her earlier conversations with Jane echoing in her mind. This wasn't just a solitary venture. She was joining a lineage of farmers, each advancing not only their fields, but also the knowledge that could uplift one another. As she navigated the sea of information, she felt an unexpected thrill. Yes, she was buried in debt, but now she was planting seeds, both metaphorically and literally, that promised a way out of financial despair. A sudden realization surged through her. She had expertise to draw upon. Her time in the corporate world had honed her negotiation skills, her ability to attract resources, and now she needed to pivot these to benefit her farming ambitions. But just as confidence surged, an old fear flickered. What if she failed? What if all these plans crumbled beneath her? Each possibility felt like a weight pressing down, reminding her that the stakes were high. To drown out the fear, Sarah made a list of local farming co-ops and mentorship programs. The realization that she wasn't alone was a balm to her anxiety. With a flick of her finger, she reached out to a couple of local programs seeking guidance and solidarity. They answered with enthusiasm, eager to help a new farmer find her footing. When Sarah finished, her heart raced, not from dread, but from palpable excitement. She considered her corporate offer again, the negotiations that still loomed. The picture it painted was one of monotony, suffocating expectations. But what if it could also be fuel, something to fall back on while she nurtured her farming aspirations? Would her heart betray her dreams one last time in pursuit of safety, or had she finally gleaned enough courage to let them bloom? As shadows lengthened, cutting across her living room, Sarah felt both apprehensive and hopeful. The path ahead was uncertain. Her heart battled the temptation of comfort against the call for authenticity. What if each step she took toward farming made her corporate resolve weaker? With a phone buzzing in her pocket, another email from the corporate office awaited her, this time with a deadline looming over her aspirations. Sarah took a deep breath, pondering the weight of possible choices. The time had come to confront both her old life and the new identity she was desperately trying to forge. What would she choose as the clock ticked down to a moment she could no longer ignore? The email lingered, its presence a digital weight bearing down on her resolve. The anticipated deadline felt like a guillotine awaiting a decision, and with every second that ticked by, doubt circled like a hawk honing in on its prey. Sarah glanced at the clock, then back at her phone, the glaring screen offering no answers but magnifying her internal conflict. Her mind spiraled through scenarios, each iteration revealing the depth of her ambition and fear. The corporate offer would provide immediate financial relief, a reprieve from the oppressive specter of debt that loomed daily. But what of the promise she had made to herself? Could she truly exchange her blossoming dream for a paycheck that came with strings tied to a desk chair? Shaking off her apprehension, Sarah took a moment to recall the bliss she felt while digging her hands into the cool, rich soil earlier that day. It felt like an awakening a part of her that had been dormant for too long. She thought about meeting the mentors, the locals who seemed interested in helping her embrace this new life. Real lives were at stake beyond her own. Partnerships could be formed, knowledge could be shared, and perhaps together they could rise from the challenges that fragmented their dreams. This was more than a career change. It was a chance to root herself in a community that shared her passion. With renewed clarity, Sarah decided to draft responses to the mentors she had contacted. She laid out her intentions and vulnerabilities, hoping to attract empathy and guidance. There was a risk involved in revealing her uncertainties, but she knew adopting transparency was essential. The corporate world had equipped her with a plethora of skills, but humility wasn't a lesson learned in boardrooms. It would take boldness to face the farming community with openness. As she typed, a flicker of inspiration coursed through her fingers. Perhaps the best path to her goal lay in leading with authenticity and collaboration rather than her previous alone-driven mindset. The prospect of working alongside others ignited a vision of co-creative growth, a network of support in unfamiliar territory. Once she hit send, a rush of exhilaration subsided the weight of indecision. For the first time, she felt the freedom that came from owning her choices, debating risks without the self-limiting cages of her previous life. Could this mark the first step into becoming not just a farmer, but a leader among peers? She visualized forging partnerships, rallying around the land, collectively leveraging their insights and knowledge to foster each other's success. But still, the clock ticked, and the corporate offer remained, glossy and pristine, promising an easy out from her financial struggles. In the quiet moments alone, doubt crept back in, whispering the familiar darkness. Pictures of failure flickered behind her eyelids, taunting her with the humiliation of abandonment. Would she really exchange her hard-fought dreams for a cushioned seat surrounded by corporate jargon? Lost in thought, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a reply from one of the mentorship programs. Excitement swirling in the words as they invited her to a meeting the following week. They could assist her in selecting the right crops, managing finances effectively, and providing support throughout the daunting startup process. Elated yet unsettled, Sarah realized this felt like a turning point. Was she ready to fully commit to this endeavor, to plant herself in an unpredictable and often harsh environment? Every seed planted carried the potential for transformation, but also invited the risk of drought and decay, reflecting her own vulnerabilities. As she pondered under the fading light, Sarah faced the ultimate dilemma. Would she tether herself to a predictable life or give in to the thrill of cultivating her own identity? The path to the unknown stretched out before her, and the hesitation here was palpable as it evolved into an internal battle for the time ahead. Each choice she made would incubate a future that one could only dream of, or one marred by regret. But she knew, without a doubt, that soon she would have to face both the corporate world she left behind and the open possibilities awaiting her, ecstasy tinged with fear. Decisions must be made, but which would define her true self? A knock echoed from her back door, startling her from contemplation. With every ounce of resolve, she stepped towards the sound, a wavering curiosity igniting the embers of potential change yet again. What new path awaited her through that threshold? She opened the back door cautiously, the hinges creaking like the uneasiness in her heart. Stepping outside, Sarah was met with the sight of an unfamiliar figure standing with a basket of assorted vegetables, a neighbor from down the road. The bright colors of tomatoes, peppers, and squash seemed to mirror the vibrancy of life that pulsed through the air, filling her with a renewed sense of purpose and grounding. "Hi there, I'm Ellen," the neighbor said, flashing a warm smile. "I'm all about growing and sharing fresh produce. I heard you might be starting out in farming. Thought I'd bring by a little gift to welcome you to the neighborhood." Once again, Sarah was reminded of the connections waiting just beyond her hesitation. The simple act of kindness stirred something within her, a flicker of the community she yearned for, but had yet to embrace. "Thank you, Ellen. I'm Sarah. This is incredibly generous of you." Sarah's smile felt lighter now, filling the void that had burdened her for too long. With every conversation she navigated, she felt the walls of her previous existence crumble, brick by brick. They chatted for a while, and Sarah found warmth in Ellen's stories about local practices, issues they faced, and the joy of nurturing the land. Her confidence in her commitment was rebuilding, even as remnants of doubt still lurked in the periphery. Here was someone who shared a genuine passion for farming, someone who offered the camaraderie itself a lonely city dweller often needed. Returning inside with the bounty in her arms, Sarah felt a surge of empowerment. It brought clarity to her muddled thoughts. This was what she had been looking for: connection, understanding, and the motivation to take a risk. Her ambition was beginning to turn from a solitary journey into a shared endeavor. After she arranged the vegetables on her kitchen counter, she grabbed her journal, the pages now filled with plans and sketches. In her previous life, she had written business proposals and development plans that revolved around self-serving metrics. Now, her focus had shifted. She wanted to construct a model based on partnerships that nurtured the land and its people. Boldly, she drafted a framework for collaboration, delineating roles and exchanges that could benefit every participant. What if her venture could be more than a personal success? Perhaps integrating local wisdom with her skill set could yield a thriving community of growers tied together by shared aspirations. Each idea ignited a flame that eclipsed her earlier worries. Her confidence burned brighter, illuminating the path forward. But the phone buzzed again, drawing her back into reality. Another email, this time from the corporation, confirming a call to finalize her acceptance. The fluorescent glow of her screen took on an ominous hue. Decision time loomed. Sweat prickled at her brow as she felt that all-too-familiar tension return. Could she simply dismiss the corporate offer and roll the dice on the uncertain path of farming? What if she was wrong? What if she failed? Each question bore down on her, heavier than ever before. Yet today's encounter with Ellen nudged against the doubts, like a gentle breeze clearing fog from her mind. This wasn't merely about survival, it was about discovery and growth, like the seeds she would soon plant. Sarah's heart raced, grasping the weight of transformation hanging delicately before her. She took a deep breath, allowing the thoughts to settle. The crossroads awaited her. Boldness had been summoned, but first she'd have to confront the corporation head-on. Would they offer her security, or would she hold firm to the call of the land? As she stood there, torn yet energized, she felt the tides of change begin to swell within her. The moment had arrived when she must choose which identity she would embrace, the corporate strategist or the passionate farmer. Resolute, she picked up her phone, staring at it with determination. "I'm ready to decide." Before she pressed send, the door creaked open again, this time not out of curiosity but necessity, a wind of uncertainty swirling back into her life. She turned, sensing that whatever lay ahead was going to demand every ounce of her courage. As Sarah turned back to her phone, she felt a whirlwind of emotions surging within her. Shame shot through her at the thought of her corporate past, but it was tinged with exhilaration as well. What lay beyond that dim-lit screen wasn't a mere job offer. It was a reflection of a life that she had tried to outgrow. But she hesitated, her thumb suspended. Suddenly, the weight of her decision seemed suffocating. Should she decline the offer and stake her future on this newfound farming dream? Her mind was clouded with visualizations of axes swinging in a corporate boardroom versus the slow nurturing of soil in open air. She took another deep breath, feeling the earth beneath her feet, the roots extending deep into the ground, nourishing her spirit. Ellen's voice echoed in her brain. "It's about growing and sharing." What was it about the land that felt lighter than any corporate policy she'd ever had to navigate? Gripping her phone tighter, she began to piece her thoughts into a plan. It struck her that this would need to be not just a leap of faith, but a calculated action. She envisioned building a cooperative, a mutualistic venture where local growers could join, share knowledge and resources. It was bold and unprecedented in her mind, but suddenly it clicked. She scribbled thoughts furiously in her journal, penmanship fierce and determined. The proposal was taking shape before her very eyes. Gradually, the sunlight filtering through her kitchen window seemed brighter and warmer, as if affirming her emerging intent. With each stroke of her pen, uncertainty began to ebb. Here she was, no longer weighed down by corporate jargon, but enthralled by the rhythm of her heartbeat matching the pulse of the earth. And yet, another question surfaced. Could she really forge a path devoid of a safety net? Just as she began to let ideas flow, doubts crept back in, gnawing at her resolve. She thought of the bills accumulating, the debts that loomed like shadows ready to pounce. There was no luxury to dream, and yet she was no longer the same woman who fled the specter of corporate America. She had glimpsed the potential to create value beyond profit, a vision wrapped in community and sustainability. The phone buzzed again, an eager reminder that her moment of truth was approaching. She set her jaw, determined to quell the rising panic. Anything worth having required sacrifice. If it meant reaching out in boldness to others, so be it. She negotiated silently with herself. Could she formulate this idea into a tangible business plan in the same way she once crafted development proposals? Of course she could. In fact, here she had a golden opportunity to marry her expertise with this newfound calling. With resolved composure, she felt the tension in her shoulders slowly release. Whatever she decided, she could integrate her past strengths into this realm of growth. Just as clarity began enveloping her thoughts, a loud knock interrupted her. The sound reverberated like a warning bell, sharp and demanding. Curiosity pulled her to the door. Perhaps it was Ellen again, or a new unexpected twist. Whatever awaited her now felt like the tip of a new wave rising in her life. Heart racing, Sarah composed herself, heart pounding with possibilities and a sense of impending change. She approached the door, hand hovering over the handle, ready to confront whatever lay on the other side. The moment felt monumental. The next chapter of her life awaited. What or who would she find waiting for her? Each second stretched into eternity as Sarah stood poised at the door, her hand lingering anxiously over the handle. The rapid drumbeat of her heart intensified, a reminder that change, no matter how liberating, often carried the weight of risk. Taking a steadying breath, she opened the door. Before her stood a tall figure, familiar yet unexpected. It was Ellen, the wise woman whose life she aspired to emulate. Ellen's warmth radiated through her bright smile, but it was the clipboard in her hands that piqued Sarah's apprehension. Amidst her own swirling thoughts, Ellen exuded a calm assurance that felt both grounding and inspiring. "Sarah, I'm glad I caught you," Ellen said, her voice rich with enthusiasm. "I came with something to discuss. You know that farming initiative we talked about? I have some connections in your area, and I thought it might be the perfect time to bring people together." Ellen's words stirred something deep within Sarah. It wasn't just about the farming initiative. It was about collaboration, community, and that bond shared by those who rose to challenges together. Yet deeper still, Sarah felt an undercurrent of dread, the very specter she'd been avoiding. "Ellen, I've been thinking," Sarah started hesitantly, "about building a cooperative here, something local to help aspiring farmers, but I'm also terrified." She paused, her vulnerability eclipsed by the palpable boldness that Ellen invoked. Ellen's expression softened. "Terrified is good. It means you're growing. What's holding you back?" "The financials," Sarah admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The debt, the bills. What if it doesn't work? What if I dive headfirst into this and it all collapses?" The admission tasted bitter on her tongue. Ellen nodded slowly, her gaze unwavering. "Every venture has its risks, but you have the expertise to craft a business plan. A proposal that merges your corporate skills with a mission-driven approach could attract investors who believe in your vision. Plus, I have some prospects in mind." Sarah's mind raced, mulling over the intertwining threads of her past experience and present aspirations. Ellen had a knack for illuminating paths that felt blocked. The prospect of merging her strategic acumen with the dream of cultivating life felt like a lifeline. "What if I asked for help? What if I revealed my doubts?" Sarah mused aloud, raising her gaze to Ellen's. Would those words carry the weight she feared? "Exactly," Ellen encouraged, gesturing animatedly. "You're not alone in this, but vulnerability is strength. The people you want to gather will resonate with your story, your struggles and triumphs. Authenticity invites authenticity." Taking a breath, Sarah soaked in the truth of Ellen's words. Could she reshape her narrative into one of resilience rather than one of shame? The idea sprouted like a seedling, fragile yet vibrant with potential. The idea of authentic connection held a power she had rarely felt in her previous life. "Let's brainstorm together," Ellen suggested, already flipping to a fresh page on her clipboard. "We need a firm structure to support your dreams and those of others. What can we offer the community? How can we build this vision while accounting for the financial aspects?" As they delved into discussions, the initial anxiety that had plagued Sarah began to dissipate. The numbers flowed, the strategies crystallized, and a framework for her cooperative began to take shape. There was still much to conquer, yet with Ellen's guidance, the shadows that once suffocated her started to recede. Hours passed like mere moments, and when they paused for breath, Sarah found herself feeling empowered. Her corporate past was still a part of her, but it transformed into an asset rather than a burden. She could own her narrative, her financial struggles, her doubts, even her triumphs. As the afternoon light dimmed, a newfound clarity sparkled in Sarah's eyes. Yet, amid the excitement of possibilities, unease lingered. What if this journey, still so young, faced opposition? The idea murmured in the back of her mind like an unsung song. The weight of decisions hovered before her. Would her past lessons serve her well, or would they become obstacles disguised as challenges? Taking a deep breath, she looked Ellen in the eyes, steeling herself for the truth. "The real test comes next, doesn't it? Facing my fears and the naysayers," she said, the conviction rising within her. Ellen nodded, a knowing smile gracing her lips. "Yes, Sarah, it's time to step into the light and claim your place. The moment has come to confront those barriers, both inside and outside." The air thickened with anticipation as Sarah's spirit surged. Now, more than ever, she had a reason to confront the looming shadows. There was a future stirring with promise, waiting for her to seize it. What awaited her on that path was uncertain, but one thing was clear. She was ready to face it, equipped with newfound resolve. How would she brave the doubts as they emerged on this precarious journey? The air crackled with a fervor that energized Sarah as she stepped into her newly defined purpose. Her conversations with Ellen had ignited a passion that had long lain dormant beneath layers of self-doubt and fear. Yet, as exhilarating as it was, the pressure of bringing her vision to life bore down on her like a heavy cloak. She sat at her kitchen table, papers strewn everywhere, business plans, budgeting worksheets, market analyses. The words blurred together, a frantic reminder of both possibility and responsibility. As the sunlight filtered through the window, casting warm patterns across the clutter, it sparked a determination within her. That determination wrestled with the nagging voice of doubt lurking in the corners of her mind. Sarah pressed her palms against the cool surface of the table, physically grounding herself in the moment. The truth was, she needed to tap into the strategic mindset that once fueled her corporate success, not just as a lifeline, but as a foundation for something greater. She picked up her laptop, the screen flickering to life with an array of tabs she had opened for research. Each click and scroll felt like an exhilarating plunge into the unknown. Could she truly rally support and resources for her cooperative? How could she convince others of her vision when she was still unsure herself? The answers began to unfold as Sarah jotted down ideas. The first step was creating a compelling narrative. She had to stop seeing herself as merely a widow steeped in debt and start viewing herself as an advocate for change. Who was she trying to inspire? What message did she want her cooperative to convey? The answers formed in her mind, amplifying her heartbeat with each realization. She envisioned a core mission, succinct yet powerful, cultivating growth, not only in agriculture but in the community around her. Each time a thought surfaced, she felt her confidence knitting itself stronger, thread by thread. But with clarity came the unsettling notion of external judgment. What would her neighbors think? The busybodies who thrived on gossip? As the questions danced in her mind, she couldn't shake the sense that part of her anxiety stemmed from her past. Those moments in corporate boardrooms flashed before her, the sharp criticisms from colleagues echoing like ghosts yearning to resurface. But they didn't hold her anymore. She wasn't the same woman. She was evolving, and it was time to confront those old fears. Breaking the thoughts with a flash of defiance, Sarah began sketching out potential partnerships with local businesses and farmers. Who among them would resonate with her mission? Each name that floated into her consciousness felt like a stepping stone on an uncharted path. Justin, whose family had farmed the land for generations, Maria, the cafe owner who cherished local produce, even the skeptical old man on the corner who always critiqued new ideas. Every connection held the potential to transform her cooperative into something credible, something rooted. Yet it dawned on her that she had been avoiding asking for help, fearing rejection. The inkling of vulnerability Ellen had mentioned loomed as a to-do item, a task that required her to forge bonds instead of battling alone. Gritting her teeth, Sarah resisted the urge to flinch at the thought. It seemed so simple yet terrifying. Again, she gripped the table and leaned forward. What if she turned this fear into a catalyst for action? Hours dragged into twilight as she made call after call. The initial stumbles transformed into more liquid conversations about shared ideals. Slowly, a community began to form around her, disparate voices finding ease in collaboration as they explored common values. As she hung up from an invigorating discussion with Maria, a smile crept across her face. Together they could host a small pop-up event at the cafe, a chance to introduce people to the cooperative model she envisioned. The plan sparked excitement, but as the idea took root, doubt gnawed again. What if no one showed up? What if the event flopped? What would it say about her vision? At that moment, the doorbell rang, snapping her from her spiral of worries. She opened the door to find Ellen standing with a box of freshly baked goods and a hopeful smile. "I thought you might need this," she said, handing Sarah the box before stepping inside, as if she belonged there. Suddenly, Sarah felt less alone in her undertaking. Ellen's casual presence was a balm against the tumult of anxiety brewing within. "You're starting something big," Ellen affirmed, placing a hand on her shoulder. "And it begins with connection. How do you feel about reaching out to the community? The next step is crucial." Swallowing her doubts, Sarah took a deep breath. How could she galvanize support while still wrestling with her insecurities? The pressure of expectation loomed large as Ellen gazed expectantly, a mirror reflecting Sarah's potential back at her. The crossroads of fear and determination loomed ahead, and Sarah could sense the weight of her choices bearing down with renewed intensity. The very act of stepping outside her comfort zone unfolded like a roadmap, one not paved with certainty, but with the daring promise of growth. What awaited her on the other side of this vulnerability? The prospect of an open door hung tantalizingly close, yet she felt her pulse quicken at the thought of potential rejection. What would the community think once they heard her story? As Ellen watched her, Sarah realized the next step was more than just launching an initiative. It would be about finding her voice in a world ready to respond. Would she embrace the opportunity to transform her lingering fears into a message of strength? Days turned into weeks as Sarah embraced her winding journey through the realm of farming. Each morning brought sunlight filtering through her curtains, a reminder of the promise she had begun to cultivate. The planning sessions with Ellen and local farmers blossomed into dynamic collaborations. She could feel the possibilities fleshing out into something real. Her first cooperative meeting loomed, a gathering designed to rally support for her burgeoning dream. Yet as the date approached, anticipation morphed into tight knots of anxiety festering in her stomach. What if her vision failed to resonate with the community? The evening before the meeting, she sat at her kitchen table once more, papers before her adorned with plans, graphs, and encouragements Ellen had penned during their brainstorming sessions. As she reread her notes, she was filled with a fierce determination. This was not just an invitation to collaborate, it was an invitation to share her story. She was no longer just Sarah, the widow in debt. She was Sarah, a woman reclaiming her life through the land that had nurtured generations. As she flipped through her notes, a wave of resolve washed over her. The title of her proposal echoed through her mind, Growth Through Collaboration, a local farmers' cooperative. It was a dream knitted together with her past experiences and future aspirations, as if it were destined to take flight amidst the rich soil before her. However, doubts still flickered like shadows. She recalled the teasing she had received in the corporate world, the dismissals and the cold stares, but those memories seemed to lose their power as she locked eyes with the sun-drenched fields stretching out from her window. That land held the essence of her husband's legacy and the potential for her children's future. The morning of the meeting, she donned a simple yet purposeful outfit reflecting her transformation, a blend of confidence and humility. Armed with her notes and undeniable passion, she made her way to the community center where the meeting would take place. As she entered the room, her heart raced, but what greeted her was the warmth of familiar faces. Neighbors, farmers, and supporters all gathered together, ready to listen. There was Tom, the wise old farmer who had ignited her resolve, and Ellen smiled reassuringly from the front. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped to the front of the room, her voice quivering as she began. She started by recounting her journey, the struggles with grief and debt, the whispered promises of what the land could offer her, and the vision that had sprung from the soil that night in her kitchen. I'm not just asking you to support me, I'm asking you to build a community where we all can thrive, Sarah declared, her voice gaining strength with every word. She presented her cooperative proposal, the plans for sustainable farming practices, local markets, and community events. As she spoke, she saw understanding in the eyes around her, nods of affirmation that sparked her resolve. The fears that had once anchored her now fueled her passion. She was not just seeking support, but inviting others into a journey alongside her. When the proposal concluded, a murmur of excitement and approval washed over the room. Questions flowed, ideas abounded, and Sarah felt the weight of her doubts lift, replaced by the exhilarating currents of possibility. Ellen and Tom chimed in, encouraging everyone to share their thoughts, their experiences, and their hopes for the cooperative. I believe in what you're building, Sarah, Tom said, a proud smile on his weathered face. The room erupted in applause, their encouragement laced with authenticity, and support enveloped her like a dense, warm blanket, trailing away the chill of uncertainty. A few weeks later, the first community event was hosted in the very fields she had once seen as barren. Families came together, neighbors united by a shared vision, and Sarah stood in the center with her children at her side, heart swelling. They ran through rows of sunflowers planted in her husband's honor, each bloom echoing resilience and renewal. Underneath the vast blue sky, Sarah realized that she had not only conquered her initial challenges, she had proven to herself that she could manifest change. She looked at her children, their laughter filling the air, brightening even the cloudiest of days. This was her achievement, the true embodiment of her husband's legacy intertwined with her own newfound purpose. Standing at the helm of her flourishing cooperative, Sarah had achieved not only a thriving business model, but also a community woven together by courage, similar struggles, and shared dreams. Each plant that thrived in the soil mirrored her evolution. They had weathered storms, but had also blossomed. With renewed confidence, she acknowledged her growth not just professionally, but deeply within, establishing roots that would support her for years to come. She could confidently send an invitation to the corporate world she had left behind, not for support or aloof negotiations, but for a collaborative project focused on sustainability. Standing firm, she had emerged victorious, not just over her debts, but in embracing life's complexities. Now, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Sarah reflected on her journey. She had learned to share vulnerabilities, built connections, and ultimately transformed grief into gratitude. This was not just a conclusion to her struggle. It was the beginning of a vibrant life filled with purpose, community, and lasting legacy. A tribute to what could grow when one dared to plant the seeds of hope. Now it's your turn. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can ignite inspiration in your life. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure these powerful narratives reach those who need them. Comment below your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey and how you think she'll continue to grow. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's spread the message of transformation together.